The 2019 video game Resident Evil 2, this is a great remake in my opinion. Capcom had got so many things right. They improved upon some of the gameplay mechanics. Even several years later, this is still fun to play for any Resident Evil fan out there. I recently had went and played through both Leon and Claire's story, and I have to say this is a nice update from the original. Yeah, there's so much that I like about this remake, the graphics, the voice acting, the gameplay mechanics, plus how scary it is, as there are several moments throughout the gameplay where I was in danger and I actually had to fight to survive. Not only that, but this is also one of the best modern day horror remakes from the 2010s because it gets so many things right, especially with the story. And while Leon and Claire's campaigns can be completed in a couple of hours, I think that was the right decision because we couldn't have this game be over 20 hours for both those characters, because if that was the case, a lot of people would have complained that it would have been way too long. The puzzles in this, they are difficult, with some of them taking me several minutes to complete, but I always like to have a challenge when it comes to figuring out how to solve a particular puzzle in order to move forward in the game. Another thing I wanted to point out is that while the music in this is good, it's nowhere near iconic compared to the soundtrack of the '98 game. Overall, this is straight up an entertaining video game. Even all of these years later, this is without question one of the best remakes in this long run franchise. To be honest, Capcom is a master at remakes. When they own their game, we get something like the original Resident Evil remake, which is still fun to play even all these years later. But when they're not, we get something like Resident Evil 3 remake where they cut out a lot of the content, what made that game so great. And we'll get to that eventually, but as far as this game is concerned, I have to say they did such a good job. Particularly just how updated a lot of the gameplay mechanics are, the graphics. Even when the zombies follow you room to room, yeah, it's scary. Probably not as scary compared to Mr. X. He follows the player everywhere. And during one of my recent playthroughs, he actually followed me even though I hadn't moved, just to test out if Mr. X still followed you even when you're not moving. He showed up. He's like the Terminator, where he's just relentless coming after the player. And particularly as far as how they updated Leon, they did such a good job. And particularly with his story, I like how more involved Marvin is, as well the Claire storyline, where he helps a lot more than he did in the original. And not only that, but for Claire, her storyline, watching over Sherry, dealing with Chief Irons, and of course G, who mutates several times throughout the game. But one particularly complaint I have, why the heck did they have to change the stage 4? In the original, he changed into a dog-like creature, but here that is not the case. And it's just a small minor complaint. But I think this game has a lot of replay value. There are so many modes, the Fourth Survivor, which is difficult, and so much more. There's alternate costumes. I was like, man, Capcom did such a brilliant job with this remake. Even though it took them over 20 years to come out with this remake, it still plays well even several years later. Certain enemies such as the Ivy, which I thought was particularly interesting. At the end of the day, I would recommend for people to check this out if they never played it, because it is worth the time. It respects the legacy of the original Resident Evil 2. And quite frankly, it's just very entertaining from beginning to end. I'm giving this video game a 8 out of 10. So the question is, do I prefer this over the original? Of course not. And the reason being is because I have a lot of nostalgia for that 1998 video game. I grew up playing it, have a lot of fun memories of it. And this remake, like I said before, it is great. It's just in the beginning, getting to the Raccoon Police Department happens way too quickly. I was a little disappointed by it, but it wasn't enough to ruin my experience with this. Another thing I want to point out is that I think it's cool you can incorporate the original music in the deluxe edition. I thought that was a nice feature. As far as the boss battles are concerned, they're done really well here, particularly with both G and Mr. X. Another noticeable thing is just how good the stories are for Leon and Claire. The interactions between Ada Wong and Leon feel more real, they feel more human than they ever did in the original game. And I can say the exact same thing with Claire and her interactions with the characters in her story. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this one. It is simply a significant reimagining of a classic video game from the late 90s. And quite frankly, it's also a thrilling gaming experience as well. And that's my review of Resident Evil 2. Okay, leave your comments down below in the section and let me know what you think about this video game. Alright, this is Slim Guy 172 saying peace out.